very pleased to have our four guests here today, and I'm really happy that you guys are here too. Obviously, we're talking about international reporting, and we're talking about the possibilities of being able to do that right here in New York too, by going right to the communities that have lots of Chinese Americans or Caribbean Americans, you name it. You can do the international reporting here in the classes you're taking now, and for Pandora's Box pieces, as well as going out to the Queen's Weeklies and getting some bylines. So keep with that in mind. You can ask a lot of New York questions too. I'll give a very quick introduction of our guests. We have Fritz Earl McClimate here joining us today, and I will give you his business background and international background in a minute. So we're very lucky to have him as our guest today also. I'm very happy that Sedef is here. Sedef Cully, class of
2009.
Class of 2009 graduate of York College. That is super cool that she's here with international reporting experience, and she's a multimedia freelance reporter. So Sedef, welcome back.
And you said you were Pandora's Box, right?
I was the news editor.
Very good.
at Pandora's Box.
We're really glad to have you here. The last talk we had, you worked a little bit with Marinissa, right?
Yes.
Little bit?
Yeah.
Marinissa was here to talk about the first Enrichment series. So this is a really great part of it to have alums here to talk about the real world. It's definitely a strong possibility for you guys to have some mentoring go on with all four of you. Joe, thank you very much for coming. Joe Wei, managing editor of the World Journal, a Chinese American newspaper, a Chinese newspaper here in New York, as well as the World Journal Weekly as well, right? Also, okay, very good. And I'm glad you're here too. Thank you, Joe, for coming. Very good. And last but not least, Gary Pierre, CUNY J School, a friend to make. You think maybe the job market is a little crazy and wild and want some more training? Maybe you want to make a friend here. But I'll describe now in detail, reverse order, exactly what Gary's specialty is. He is running the, to get it exactly right, the Center for Community and Ethnic Media, correct?
Oh, excellent.
The man is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He also is co-host of a show called Independent Sources on CUNY TV, and that's just scratching the surface. So we're very happy to have you here today. Now,
And owner of the Haitian Times.
very good, and founder of the Haitian Times. Very good. Joe did not. I asked Joe, can you give me a few notes about your background? And he's not one. You must not be one to blow your own horn because this is 4 lines. You arrived at the World Journal in '88, okay, and now you're managing editor. Do that math. That's not too bad. Now he's in charge. The biggest Chinese paper in the U.S. All right, and your specialties, your beats: police, courts, politics, and Chinese American communities. All right, so there's a real way to think about covering China-U.S. issues or China international issues right here in New York. And there's also a World Journal Weekly, as I mentioned before, where you are national editor. So we're very pleased to have you. And then if I switch gears over to our fabulous York graduate, Sedef, just to summarize a few things, can speak Urdu, Hindi, Arabic, as well as Farsi, Pashto, which Pashto is in Afghanistan, right?
No, it's northern Pakistan. Dari is Afghanistan.
Okay. And she went, after
You gotta know the
graduation,
difference.
back to Karachi, and in Karachi, Pakistan is where you worked at Dawn.com, right?
Yep.
Dawn.com, which operates as a daily, though it's online,
Yeah.
right?
It's an English newspaper and a website.
It's on the streets as a real paper and it's online, but you
Yeah.
were more of the multimedia
Yeah.
side. Very good. And that included a lot of reporting, and this is back in 2010, but still a really great examples of reporting on major flooding that really hit Pakistan back in 2010, so we can touch on that a little bit. Your specialties: hard news, features, blog posts, media galleries, so I guess you're talking audio, video, and stills that you can just run right through back when you were at Dawn.com. So we'll go into what you're working on now also. I saw a DNA info piece. That was fairly recent, or?
No, that
No?
was
Okay,
that
so
was last year.
All right, so very good. So Def, we're very happy to have you here. And then last but not least, the managing partner of McClimate and Kunda, and also managing director of NMBC Global, we have Fritz McClimate. So thank you very much for coming. We're really glad to have you here. Very good. I'm not going to cut you off there, though, because I did my research, and I have, you ready for this? Basically, if you have to pick one word for Mr. McClimate, would you say entrepreneur?
Yes.
Yes, an entrepreneur. 40 years experience, more than 40 years experience in things like developing and managing private, non-for-profit, kind of quasi-governmental enterprises in the US and all over the world. One thing I want to highlight is this NMBC, which is on your super classy name tag, which has some, that organization I want to highlight also, and you can explain about its international operation. But what I wanted to accentuate was the energy business that I think is in the Caribbean, right?
It's in the Caribbean.
Okay, right. So I think we could maybe touch on that, because to me that's a beat that certainly is international. It's an example of an international issue to cover. So that's enough from me. I would like to get a quick introductory couple of minutes from each of our guests. And Fritz, can we please start with you? Just a hello and maybe one thing that you would consider a strong theme we must cover. If you could just introduce it and everybody can do an introductory comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for showing up. Not always that young people do so. I guess unlike the other participants, as a business person, international businessman, I look for what journalists do. So I would be the recipient of what it is you guys write about internationally. I operate in New York, so I will get up at any time in 24 hours and may be connected directly with China or Africa or the Caribbean, looking for information on the basis of which I'll be making decisions. So what you produce allows me, as an entrepreneur, international businessman, to make decisions that will affect my existence. Tom mentioned my energy business arm. My energy firm is Britain Earth Energy Limited. It's based in the Caribbean, but I see our largest market being Africa. Why would I establish a company in the Caribbean that serves the African market? I can get into that later, but that's part of our strategy. And a journalist who is looking at energy, if you look at solar, I'll give you a little key. If you look at the solar industry, one of the largest emerging alternative energy markets today, that band where the sun hits the earth the most is a belt that stretches from the Caribbean right through North Africa to East Africa. And that's a very strong sun belt. So if I'm looking at where the greatest amount of energy is going to be, that's where I'd be looking. So what I did was to set up a company in the Caribbean that has similar political and cultural characteristics to one of the largest emerging markets, Africa. So in essence, the other thing I do is entrepreneurial development. Thank you. The National Minority Business Council is a 42-year-old membership business organization, and what we do there is entrepreneurial development. And I say we are training and grooming the next wave of global entrepreneurs. So I do spend a lot of time with young entrepreneurs, not necessarily journalists. A few of them interface with us. But we work primarily with young entrepreneurs. That's essentially what I do.
Thank you very much, Sadaf. It's all yours. Slide the mic over if you don't mind.
Hi, I'm Sadaf Cully. I don't think I need a mic.
Oh, it's just
It's for the camera. Okay. So I am a freelance multimedia journalist, and I think one of the things that is not being covered in the United States that I haven't seen across the country yet is with all of the Islamic terrorism, Islamic-related terrorism that's going across the country, like groups like ISIS, and you're hearing reports about these teenage boys that are joining these groups, whether it's social media or not, how that's actually affecting young Muslim Americans in the United States. I don't think I'm hearing what the social, the emotional, physical effect is happening. I haven't seen these stories yet, and I think that would be something I'd love to read. Like, in a very profound sense, I want to read something that really increases the average American's knowledge about Islam and what a young Muslim boy or girl is experiencing in this country currently.
Read between the lines. She knows the beat. She's saying take a stab at it, start working and reporting on it now, and you might get lucky and be able to beef it up and get it in print, Pandora's Box, Queens Weeklies, and beyond. That's a not so subtle suggestion.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Wei. Like I said, I've been a managing editor for World Journal for about 6 years. Before that, I was a national editor, and also I'm really right now also taking care of the city desk. Do everyone know right now where the President Obama is right now? Yes, he's in China right now. As we speak, he is talking to the President of the China, Mr. Xi Jinping. And that's what I do last night or early this morning, just come to the desk. We cover through our sister paper, Cooperation Partner in China. They relate our news regarding how the President Obama gave a speech on the APEC, Asian Pacific Council of Economics. He gave a speech regarding how the importance of Asian is, and he of course made a major announcement which will have a major impact to our newspaper as well. The Chinese American in this country as well, American in general. That's President announced that he will extend the visa, B1 visa, that is for the business people for short-term stay in the United States for 10 years, and the student visa for 5 years. That's double among the current times. That implies that everyone from China, as long as they have money, he can, as long as he's a China citizen, he can apply for visa and will automatically have a 10-year visa, and he can stay in the United States at present for 6 months. So you can go tourists, you can go shopping, you can go visiting, anything. In other words, he can spend the money in the United States for 6 months, and maybe next year. So this is a great opportunity from our point of view. Is a great opportunity to cover this kind of interaction in the next maybe a decade. Okay, I stop here though.
Joe, thank you. I should have gotten that news peg into your intro.
Okay.
So I failed on that news
don't worry.
peg.
Yes.
Everybody, vocab word for your classes. Gary, go ahead.
I guess I need that mic. I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, so I'm a little bit nasal. But anyway, that won't stop me. I want to talk to you about foreign reporting, how important it is in the age of globalization, where the world is really a 12-hour flight away from you, wherever you want to go. It's really important because I think it's personally rewarding. It's also professionally challenging. Personally rewarding because it takes you to places that you otherwise would never have gotten to for no other reason but your work. It's also tricky because as a foreign correspondent, you're a cultural interpreter. You're trying to interpret where you are to an American audience, and sometimes that gets kind of tricky in so doing, and a lot is lost in translation. And we could touch back on that later if you want. Excuse me. Now, the other thing I want to mention is that unfortunately, in the last 10 years or so, most major U.S. news organizations have cut back tremendously on their foreign reporting because of economic challenges. While I understand that move, but I think it's quite short-sighted. And I'll tell you a little anecdote. I used to live in Togo, West Africa, about 25 years ago. I'm dating myself. And I was at the American Cultural Center reading. It was sort of like a library, and this young Togolese man walked up to me and struck up a conversation and asked me where I was from. Well, for me, that's a complicated question because I was born in Haiti. I grew up in New Jersey and New York, went to college in Florida, and then I have to pick and choose where I'm from. And I told him I was from New Jersey. And this young man went and to tell me the names of the senators from New Jersey, and he knew many of the congressmen. And I asked him, why? I mean, most people in New York don't care about New Jersey. And he's answered to me, so that was that America is the most powerful country. I want to know as much as I can about America. But the average American does not care to know anything about the rest of the world, and that is a sad case.
Thank you very much. I want to jump right in with this idea of New York City reporting as international reporting, and I think I'll go right back to Gary because of your newspaper and also what you tell the grad school students about that, doing international reporting right here at the 5 boroughs.
Well, it's interesting.
Exaggerate your cold.
It's interesting you mentioned that because Kirk Sample, who is a New York Times reporter, had a beat that he called, he's a foreign correspondent in New York because he covers the immigrant communities in New York. And I think he's absolutely correct. A lot of these, New York is a microcosm of the world. I mean, I'm sure people around the country, around the world, are sick and tired of hearing about this. But in this borough, the most diverse place in the world, you have everyone is well represented, and this is also the beauty of New York. You just don't have an expat or a small group. Everyone is well represented, and so it's a great opportunity for people who want to cut their teeth into foreign reporting to be in New York and go to different neighborhoods and see how these neighborhoods interact and how you can translate New York's communities to the larger city. At the school, we run a website called Voices of New York that tries to do exactly that. Every day we select, we translate, we edit, and we post stories from about 5 or 6 publications. But we scan about 80 publications on a weekly basis, and so this is, I think, we are. Well, yeah, we translate those that are in English. World Journal being one of our members. We have stories, and the idea for that is, again, you have a lot of policymakers, decision makers in the city who are making changes and decisions based on very little knowledge. A lot of times they don't know what's happening in these communities, and we want to make sure that these communities are taken into account when decisions are being made. And this is essentially the role of the media, where you want to inform and entertain. There's a sense of social justice, but it's also simply to give people information so you can understand each other. Because a lot of times prejudices and racism and all kind of ism, at the root of it is lack of understanding. You don't know a person, so whatever stereotypes you hear about the person, then you buy into that, and then that becomes your point of reference to any particular group. And journalism, at its best, should try to diffuse that.
If somebody right now raised their hand and said, well, I'd actually like to be a foreign correspondent, I'll go to Port-au-Prince right now. I'll go cover the most difficult Haitian issues. Well, I want you to explain, and then maybe we'll switch over to Fritz about, well, you need to know somebody here in New York. That's the classic line, and Sadef, you can jump in too. You need to know an editor. You have to have a relationship. It helps a lot before you go to report somewhere else. Can you fill in the gaps there about how you would make a connection with the Haitian American New York press here, possibly, before you go and write and learn?
Well, certainly. I mean, as a reporter, before any assignment, no matter where it is, you have to do research. And that's, as Tom mentioned, in many ways, it helps you to connect with local journalists here and pick their brains and have them be your guide. And also important to make connection with journalists in the country, Port-au-Prince, wherever it is you're going, because I think that should be our first stop, because they are kindred spirits. We understand each other, and they're more likely than not to tell you what's going on. They'll be straight up with you. Oftentimes, if you go to a government source, I mean, they have their own agenda. If you go to some even human rights sources, they have their own agenda. And so sometimes it's best, I would suggest, your first stop would be to other reporters, and then you branch out from there.
Thank you. If we move over to Sadef, before you went to go report, let's say, in Karachi, in Pakistan, what I'm trying to think of is what connections you wanted to make first. So you didn't go over there cold and then call New York and say, I'd like to write 1,500 words or 3,000 words or 500 words for you. So you make the connections here, do your work here, learn here, before you go and try to be a foreign correspondent in whatever country you're interested in.
So my focus was a little bit different. I really wanted to write for Pakistan's audience. I didn't want to write for Pakistani Americans yet. I felt like if I wanted to report in the region, I need to understand my audience. In order to do that, I'd have to be in the country, I'd have to be around the people, because I wanted to become an expert in this scenario. So I kind of just packed my stuff and left, which was a very bad decision, because I had which was, I had a very tough time the first few months that I was there because they don't like Americans. I sound American. And despite what I look like, they won't trust you because you're American. Even though I have Pakistani origins, I speak the language, they just won't because you're American. So I think that's a very wise suggestion to make some contacts here before you leave if you want to report for New York. And sometimes I think the best advice that I've ever been given from a professor is just to call somebody, an editor, and say, can we meet for a cup of coffee? I have some ideas I want to share. I want to talk to somebody about it. I think you might be interested in it. If you have some time, can we meet for a cup of coffee? And you'll be surprised how many editors will say yes. I've had many people say yes to me and meet with me for like 10, 20 minutes. You have to have pitches ready. You have to pitch all the time, constantly, and you have to be able to sell them on the phone. And I sometimes pitch on GChat, so I'm always on 24/7, unfortunately. So, but the stories get through like that, and the editors work in that way. And I guess I think the other piece of advice I would tell you is I read a lot of books on Pakistan. Even though I'm from there, I really didn't know about Pakistan. So I read a lot of the political, historical, any issues that I thought were relevant before I approached an editor over there or even tried to like communicate with a news organization. I read up on the country and became a complete sponge. I threw out everything that I knew in my head that I thought I knew about Pakistan, and I relearned everything through books and recommendations from professors and teachers here at York, some at York College. So, that's really important. You have to know your subject matter. If you don't know your subject matter, then you won't be able to report fairly on the issues that you're addressing.
Did you throw out everything that Lewis and Hughes taught you to?
Absolutely
I
not.
wasn't here yet.
They're treasured. They're treasured advice.
Joe, same question for you. I'm trying to figure out what would happen if an intrepid young journalist said, I've already reported here in New York on these Chinese issues, talking to the Chinese American community, the New York Chinese community. Now I'm going to go to China and start writing stories. Obviously, SEDEF met with some suspicion, but also you have the Chinese government to deal with when it comes to trying to send hard-hitting, black and white, real news stories back to the U.S. What happens? If somebody says, I'm going over there, and I'll send you some stories. I'll send stories to the World Journal. What advice do you give them? What's the path?
Well, there's first of all, I'm gonna thank you, Gary, for inviting me, and all of you invite me here, though. This is a very interesting question, because China, you have two different pictures right now. One is the people, the 1.3 billion people. They hugely embrace American freedom, a movie, Hollywood, or the freedom, all kind of stuff to represent the American spirits. However, on the official side, they are kind of very skeptical about all the we call the universal value, which the United States represent, including freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of press, freedom of being. What's that the other one? Religions. Yes, religion. Forgot that one though. Yes. So you have to. If I want to send one of you to go to China over there, I will tell you how do you deal with two different kinds of people, and I will give you source that either is official source. I can give you Xinhua Agency, I can give you the China Press, and also can give you all the metropolitan news reporter work over there, or more liberal reporter over there. But I also can give you the context of the dissidents that's really who criticize the governments fiercely, and some people even put into jail. So I can give those two kind of people. But also, I would suggest you just go out there to meet with the people and to learn how do they live, even from the start of in the morning. How do they get the kids to go to school? What kind of problem he think that the school, his children facing in the school about the education system, and how you ask the parents how and why and where is the social mobility for the kids to start from the little village of the China and go all the way up, even go to the United States, or make something or do something. You can just go out and mingle with the people to ask them the real question like this. and then you put together, maybe you can get a little bit picture about what China right now is. Um, from our newspaper, World Journal, actually I would consider is kind of is a Chinese American newspaper. We haven't print in Chinese, but we reported basically is about not only the facts of China or the current China or current issue of China, but we also present the different critiques, the criticism from United States, from other Western countries. How do they view the China? All kind of restraint that I talk about. Then how do they view China as a leading power right now, and who struggle right now between the modern and past, and how kind of issue they are the issue they are grabbing right now. So there's a tremendous range of issues that we have looked into at. So I just suggest each one of you have a really, really open mind to go over there and to talk with the people. I think that would be the main source that you can get it from there. Thank you.
If we pass the
Yep, yeah.
Mr. Wei, and actually for the other people on the panel, one of the kinds of stories that are going to be more accessible to students here who aren't going to get a chance necessarily right away to travel around the world is to talk about the New York City stories that reflect the different cultures from these different countries. And maybe one of the most important stories, universally for all these different kinds of publications would be stories about immigration and assimilation. And the idea of what different ethnic groups and different national groups have to go through in the United States to feel a sense of assimilation, yet also holding on to their national roots and their cultural roots. How do you suggest that students here approach those kind of stories, those more accessible stories about assimilation and immigration? And do they have to be Chinese to cover Chinese assimilation? Do they have to be African American to cover African assimilation?
I'd like to address that because, Joe, is it?
Yes.
You mentioned a couple of things. As a journalist, you have a responsibility. And your primary responsibility is to get to me, the recipient of the news, the truth as accurate and as fast as you can. Okay? That's what I'm looking for. I'm at a news conference in China, and the Chinese journalists are asking me about the US financial meltdown. And I'm saying, yeah, to you it's an issue, and that's the focus of the Chinese journalists. I am there as a businessman looking to engage the Chinese business community. The journalist started off with a preconceived position. He wants to find out what is happening in the American financial sector. And I'm saying, no, that's not a priority. But he insists, so finally I had to give him what he wanted. But that's what the Chinese journalists wanted, not what the American businessman is looking for. So you as a journalist, the US journalist looking to China, observe very carefully what President Obama is doing in China now. He's allowing Chinese to come in immigration. You have the money, you come, you spend it here, it's with economic advantage. You also have a law in the US called the EB-5. It's an immigration law that allows any foreigner, if you have $500,000, you can come into the US and purchase a visa for your family. So if you understand that what has happened in China for a number of years, you could have one child as part of the law, single child per family. So a very large generation of Chinese families have now become very successful, very wealthy, one child. A goal of that family is to have the child educated in the US. So if I have $500,000, sure, I come over here and I live with my $500,000. I get a visa, and part of it is permanent residency for your family, but you have to provide, it's jobs related. So again, I'm just saying that the U.S. government is saying to the Chinese, here, bring your money to us, we'll accommodate you. Very important. So a big key, if you're passionate about money, follow the money. Whatever you're reporting on, be passionate about it. If you have a responsibility to get something out, you should at least develop a passion. And I use the Ebola crisis, the second way of looking. What do you look for? We're all afraid. You know, if you go to, my wife is going to Africa, everybody says, don't go, don't go. It's scary. She's going to East Africa, okay? We're closer to the crisis in West Africa than she will be in East Africa. You get to understand the little subtleties in terms of geography. We had one U.S. Congressman, I think, who instead of saying Guinea, he said Guyana. Know your geography when you're reporting, okay? So understand those subtle differences. With Ebola, what am I looking for in the Ebola crisis? I know there's a crisis. The International Finance Corporation will be spending $540 million in investment, trade, and job creation in 3 African countries. That's news. Delve into that. Find out as a journalist, what is the benefit of that money to my community here? Okay? If you're going to be spending, you can turn to your local newspaper and say, okay, fine, there's money being spent for folks to go into West Africa and create business opportunities. So I'd look for those and understand always the subtle cultural shifts, whether it's in Africa or China.
If I follow up, thank you for that. If I follow up and say, maybe in the back row in this room full of reporters, there's an entrepreneur. What would you tell somebody who's a year or two away from the bachelor's degree and they're thinking, what should I be doing in New York to get ready to go and maybe do some entrepreneurial work or link up with an entrepreneur to work with them? What sort of advice would you give if somebody was, okay, I'm trained in journalism, but I'm actually thinking I need towards an entrepreneurial career?
Business journalism or international business, understand to read a balance sheet or a financial statement. Understand the world of business. Take a business course. We do entrepreneurship boot camps, and there are many going around the city. Grab one of those courses so you understand the language of business and you understand how the game is played. It actually is a very sophisticated international game. So understand how it is played. Get with experienced international business persons and find out how does the geopolitics of this country impact business in other areas. If we take Africa, for example, President Obama said he's spending $7 billion on energy to develop Africa's energy infrastructure. What are the benefits to the small, medium-sized enterprises? Someone has to dig deep into those opportunities and be able to say to the entrepreneur, here are the keys to open the door. And that's what a good journalist will do. Find those keys and say, one key is the US government, Exim Bank. That provides a certain amount of assistance to small businesses. Another is the Department of Commerce. They can provide assistance. And you begin to feed that information out. If it's in an article, you reference where the opportunities are. And again, to your question, Tom, talk to professionals. Many of us are prepared to spend a lot of time working with young professionals to help you.
Let's switch back, thank you, to the assimilation question. Joe, I think you're ready to jump on that. If we want to cover that
Thank
story
you.
here in New York, for example.
I just one thought about the question that's what kind of skill that you need though. Learn the language. I was very admired that you can speak all kind of Southeast Asia's language. That's one of the hotspots in the world. I really wanted to know about we wrote a cover story about Salala, who's this is a very brave young girl who won the Nobel Prize this year. We do the story about that. So you gotta learn one language. You have a neighbors, whether you're from South Africa, from China, from Caribbean, or even from the Europe. Learn the language. Take a language that interests you the most. I personally advise my kids who's in college right now to learn Spanish. So I think this is the second most important languages in the United States to learn. He knew a little bit about Chinese, then he is
It's
okay.
funny. I tell my son to learn Chinese, and
My
I think that's going to be more
my
important than Spanish.
4-year-old nephew in Dubai is learning Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese is one of, unfortunate that I can speak Chinese, read the Chinese, but I will encourage my kids to learn before that I was thinking Japanese may be one of interesting though, but I think the Hispanic is very important though. So learn one language, very good. You don't have to be concentrated to the Chinese literature things. You just go to the Chinese language school here or China Institute, learn one language. I'm using Chinese example. Speak well on one language like her. You can go to the community. You can go into the country that you really wanted to do the story about it. And then you have applied the knowledge, that's the gentleman over here. So you can apply all the knowledge and you're expert, learn from the school and learn from your job and put them together. Then you give you some rockets and energy, the field to move on in your life. But, as from the journalism point of view, I think language is the most important thing if you really wanted to do a story.
I'd like to.
Yes.
I'd like to touch on this really important question. You talk about covering a simulation, and do you have to be from the community to cover that community? I think, no, you don't have to be from that community to cover that community. I think a good reporter should be able to walk in and out every community and come out with a story. Too often what happens is, and we find that among white reporters, that they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. You must, and this is what Joe is talking about, learn another language, learn the culture sometime, even because in the United States, if you cover Queens, you don't really have to speak Bengali to cover that community because someone speaks English and you could help you translate what's going on. And I've covered the Russian community, Polish community, just about, every other community because, you have to have, again, some understanding. You have to have some desire. You have to have some connection to that group that you're reporting on and understand their stories. There's a thread among immigrant groups, in this country and the city. Our stories are very similar, different in many ways, but very similar. I mean, if you put together, when I have discussions at the center, we bring in these other reporters and they exchange ideas. It's interesting. You just can fill in the blanks, and you're talking about, okay, Chinese have this problem. Same thing as a Korean, same thing as a African American, same thing as everyone else. And I'm bringing African American here because I think the original immigrants in this country are African Americans, and I think oftentimes that's lost in the discussion and the dialogue about immigrants and new Americans. But essentially, now you have a story of assimilation. 40 years ago, when you say ethnic in New York, it was Irish, Jewish, and Slovaks, and Eastern Europeans. Now it's different. Now it's even more complicated. And even when he says Chinese, well, when you go into Chinatown, be it Flushing or Manhattan or Queens, or Brooklyn, it's very complicated. It's very sophisticated, and you have to understand, what the provinces and all that distinctions. And my favorite is Latino or Hispanics when somebody says, "Oh, Latino." Well, that's great, but a Puerto Rican is very different from a Salvadorian and Argentinian, and they share the language of Spanish, but you need to understand the different culture because Hispanic is not really a culture the way we think of it. So all of that to say it's really exciting, but it takes a lot of effort as a reporter to get stories about assimilation right, because you have to really understand that. A mariachi band is not a salsa band, the difference between the two. And sometimes, believe it or not, a lot of reporters don't know the difference, and I've seen some very glaring mistakes in the reporting, and that's unfortunate.
Thank you, Gary. To continue on the assimilation idea, let me ask Sadef, where would you turn? We'll give these trainee reporters, these young college reporters, one or two hints on, okay, they want to start working on young Muslims in New York. How are they dealing with ISIS, ISIL, the increased, a new wave of maybe call it post 9/11 intensity in reporting, worrying in reporting, backlash
I could-
possibly. Give them, where would you steer if somebody said, I need 5,000 words, and here's an advance check. And I know that doesn't exist, but
No,
you
it
know,
doesn't.
Here's a bad advance check. I need
That's-
5,000 words.
I'm still dreaming of that.
My name is Remnick. Here's $5,000.
Remnick.
That he's the editor-in-chief. of the
My
New
heart
York
just dropped.
Give us one or two leads where they would go if they decided to write a story for class.
So if you're a woman or a male, there's about 30 mosques right in this area. You go to your local mosque and you speak to your mom leaders and you speak to students. You can go in there, you can take off your shoes. You're more than welcome there. No one will kick you out. You just have to adhere to proper attire rules. So, wear full sleeves, wear full pants, and cover your head with a scarf, as you would if you were in the cold, in that sense. And as long as you're respectful to other people's cultures, that's what I found, then they will help you out. And with the assimilation story, I had a very difficult time. I went to Columbia Journalism School and I graduated in 2013. And my beat was the South Bronx. I covered the 40th precinct. Christine Quinn at the time called it the hot spot. It was one of the most violent precincts. I had a situation where a man was shot in front of me while I was sitting inside the Dunkin' Donuts at 10:30 at night across from the precinct. So it is a very bad neighborhood. There's Mitchell housing projects, there was gangs, a lot of violence was going on. Plus we had the stop and frisk policy on top of that. So the neighborhood was really frothing at that point. And there was about maybe 3 blocks down, there was like a West African Muslim mosque with this imam from Mali. And I kind of just walked in there on Friday. I prayed because I'm Muslim, so I pray. I prayed with them and then I sat with them for lunch and I started talking. And basically my master's thesis revolved around that community's mosque and their congregation and how it was growing, and they were trying to get funding and money, and how difficult it is for Muslims to kind of get that support in the Bronx during an election year. John Liu, all of these people are like coming and going, and that was what my story revolved around. I didn't speak any of their languages, but I found something in common, which was my religion, and I connected with them in some kind of meaningful way where they felt comfortable enough to talk to me. And I'm not talking about it took a week or two. It took me about 2 months to go there every day and open up and actually have this imam sit down and talk to me privately, be nice to me, have the women, they didn't want me near their women, even though if I was a woman, they were scared of illegal immigration, there were all these issues, and they were very afraid of it. You just have to make people comfortable. And the best advice I could give you right now is the American Census, or it's also a New York City .gov site. It's free. You go on there, you find out the top 5 growing populations in New York, demographics in New York. You go to wherever you think you can find them. This is like the best way to cover immigration and assimilation. Find out what their issues are. How are they growing so fast, and why are they coming here so quickly? What's happening in their countries? That's international reporting in New York. That's basically what's happening.
Thank you. Can we take a deep breath? I want to say thank you right now to Professor Sarant. She did all the work, got all the guests. I am your master of ceremonies. She did the work. So before we have 2 more minutes, let the guests take a breath and thank you. And do you want to would you like to throw a comment?
It just amazes me. I just remember working at the Daily News and how things would happen in different ethnic communities, and people would just, where is the Filipino community? Where are they in New York City? And people just not aware. They're in Woodside, Queens. I'm sure there's someplace in Brooklyn where you may have a group. People are not aware of where the ethnic groups are. And I think it also starts at the base level. When you have stories that you're reporting, make sure that everyone is not Smith and Jones. Ask Mr. Hernandez, ask Mr. Liu questions about what's going on. Do your own. Do you see what I'm saying? Because sometimes you just want to only ask people who look like you or people you think is going to that will speak English, and make sure you're including those other groups. They love to be asked questions about De Blasio, right? We don't focus on that. Go ahead.
would you like to follow up on that? Do you see that in
You-
the reporting that's coming across your desk?
The one thing I really amazing I love this country about is the public education. In your city, public education is the first step for assimilation. This is a wonderful place. You know, I didn't go through the public education system, but I saw my son go through that. So I get to know as a beginning as a foreigner. I begin to know the custom of the Jewish people. I know about the Korean people from my son, and I go to school. I know PDA, but I admit most of the times my wife did it though, and so I learned this. So I think as a melting pots, public education system in this country, in this city, is the most important thing. So I think either you or anyone which can encourage the city government to have an enrichment program like this, or within your curriculums that you can use every, right now we don't have a class to teaching students about the New York City, about which section is belong to Chinese or Korean or Caribbean or even Polish. We don't have that kind of class or kind of program to let people know about New York City. So I think we have a wonderful public education system already. The first step for the simulation, then we enhance this program and this education. I think there will be help everyone, new immigrant, really get into assimilate to in this country as fast as we can.
I want to selfishly follow up on what Sadef said about at Columbia studying journalism. I said, "Can I cover Park Slope? Pre-gentrified. It was still a nice, calm neighborhood." My prof said no, and she sent me to Williamsburg, pre-gentrified. One part, North Side, Polish people near Greenpoint. One part, Puerto Rican families right next door to Hasidic Jews, struggling for housing. It turned into my master's project, a radio piece. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that you just caused me to remember that, and that was international reporting to me, because it was in a brand new neighborhood, and groups that weren't really being covered in the mainstream press a whole lot. It began from that was 1991. It has increased since then. That's for sure, for sure. Now you wanted to follow up, I think, Fritz.
Yes, Joe mentioned the importance of culture, I think both gentlemen. I have a concern for today's journalists, and that has to do with the digital media. Things are becoming so compressed. You're getting information from different sources very fast. And then you have to, in turn, compress or put that information in a manner that's you. Your style, your image, your perception. It's now your perception of what the world is. So you've gone online, you get all these things, but then you have to communicate it to me in little tweets. I have a problem with that. I don't know how you guys are going to do it, but you're going to be translating or consolidating cultural information, financial information, political information, maybe getting it into one article, short, brief, that I will have to digest. Please give some thought to how you can do that responsibly and accurately. Because again, what is acceptable to one culture in Europe or Asia may not be acceptable to another culture in Cuba. And I use Cuba as an example of what's happening in Africa right now. You have Cuban doctors doing a phenomenal job. They've always worked throughout Africa. But there are very few journalists in the US who are writing about that. But African journalists will write about the impact that Cuban professionals, be they soldiers or doctors, have been having in Africa and are still having in something like the Ebola crisis. But can you get that through in snippets? I don't know.
But at the same time, though, I think the new media, it's an opportunity to do the reporting in a way that, I couldn't do. Information is readily available. Yes, you're right, Fritz. The challenge is how do you distill that information and maintain its accuracy. But I think it's great to want to be a journalist now in terms of what you can do, the audience you can communicate with. When I work at the New York Times, that was the Bible. I mean, everybody waited for what the New York Times had to say on an issue. not anymore. I mean, to some extent, yes, but today there are a lot of other sources that are just credible, and you can have access to it. I mean, right now I read what I want to read. In the past, I couldn't do that. And so I just have to be a big a supporter of new media, and I see it as a challenge, but as an opportunity for you to do your job in a way that my generation couldn't do journalism. At the J School, we're multimedia journalists. That's what we train them and give you the ability to really work in all kinds of environment. When the earthquake occurred in Haiti, in the past, the New York Times would be sort of like the primary source of information about it. But, frankly, the Haitian Times became one of the major players because, people could see our work instantly, whereas in the past, they would have to dig it. They have to come to Brooklyn or Queens somewhere and pick up a paper, and it was a cumbersome process. Now it's really accessible. Again, we just have to be responsible and follow the verities of journalism. You have to follow the rules. Like anything else, we have rules, and once you follow the rules more or less, you'll be all right.
Joe, the technology, your viewpoint with your reporters, as well as from your viewpoint as editor. For example, your website. How often a day are you and your colleagues tweeting out, here's a top story, it'll be ready in 1 hour, or it's already been out, make sure you read it? Or are you urging your reporters, as they're about to finish their story, use Twitter or other platforms?
Yes.
What's most important to you?
Gary asked me before the meeting, so how was our newspaper doing? It's killing us, though, as far as the papers goes. And social media right now on our website is killing all the traditional media right now. So we're still, I guess most of the newspapers are still in the process of trying to find the business model, which you can make money on the website. Also, you can even on website. Also, you can maintain your paper industry. Yes, we have right now in our news website. We ask our reporter to do 3 things at least. If you go to a meeting like this, so just give me 200 words. That's it, or even less. Give me 200 words. Just put on the instant news. We have an instant news program, column right there. So every news reporter just give us 200 words, no pictures, just put in there. So in the first 6 hours, we all kind of instant news over there, and we also have a group of people doing us a translation. Then you can translate all the wire service from the AP, from the New York Times, and also 200 words put on the instant news program over there. So this is the first part. The second part is that you start writing a story. As a reporter, start writing a story. Give us 400 or 600 words with the picture. We put on the website. That's it. For the website, that's it. Then, at the end of the day, or before he finishes the ships, that he give us more detailed reporting for the newspaper. And that part article will be used in the paper as well as will be upload to the website tomorrow, the next days. This is for our doing right now. But this need manpower, you need people to do all the computer things. So I don't think in most of the community newspaper, they don't have enough money, financial power to do that. This is currently how we deal with this. But from my personal point of view, it's still working very hard. This is going to be a very struggle in a long way in front of us. And the social media cannot compete with that, though. For instance, President Obama just gave a speech, and the content of that speech already be on the Chinese internet website, WeChat already. So most of the kids with the WeChats in the program, they know already, though. So how do we sell this story tomorrow to our readers? So this is the process of killing us right now. Yes.
Let me follow up quickly and say there were news reports, I don't know, for about a year now, that some communities are still buying a lot of newspapers. Mexican American community or Polish community. Are you still selling a lot of newspapers in the Chinese American, the New York community?
Yes.
So at least that's still a tradition that's hanging on more so. Probably the New York Times is more nervous about selling copies. So you are selling print copies as your web traffic goes up, right?
Yes, we're trying to do that, though. But as an immigrant newspaper, to some extent, even we are Chinese language newspaper here, but we still are immigrant newspaper. For the newcomer, like I mentioned before, they come to the United States. like a mother, they wanted to know where the PTA meeting, because they don't understand English, first of all. So they want to know where the PTA meeting is and how the education system goes. Where do you get immunization programs? How the holiday was celebrated. That kind of information we still need to put on our newspaper. So to some extent, as long as a new immigrant, whether either no matter where from ethnic background you come from, as long as the American door is open, new immigrant come to this country, as an immigrant newspaper, paper-wise, we still have our role to play to help to serve our reader and community.
And they would probably buy a newspaper to do that, not
Exactly.
necessarily get on the website. The kids would probably say, Mom, don't go buy the paper, I'll show you where to go on the website. But Mom and Dad are still buying the paper.
Yeah, for the old people.
So I was a digital media concentration at journalism school. So although my heart is still with the newspaper, I still like print. I like feeling things in my hands, but that's just not the way of the world, right? So if any advice I could give you now that you could start now that could probably affect your journalism career later is I would tell you to take HTML and JavaScript courses. Basic 101 HTML, 1 and 2, and JavaScript. For CT program here, telecommunications, Intro to Final Cut Pro, and audio. That's what I would tell you to take. Take a photography class 101 because journalists now are it's a one-man band. So we do everything.
Let me just say very quickly, we're offering our digital photojournalism course.
And
Very important.
And that's great that you get all of those skills right, but if you don't have the basics, know on how to report a story, then you're just another opinionated blogger. And that is the difference between a journalist and a blogger. Blogger uses their opinions and what they think they might know, and a journalist is accurate with their facts and reports what they know to be true. And that where it comes with the vetting process, where I think we haven't touched on. It's great that there's like Twitter and Facebook and it's easy to reach out to people, but you have to actually vet the person that you're reaching out to. It happened a lot in Syria. Even the New York Times made a mistake a few times when they were reporting YouTube videos of the rebels in Syria, or the government of Syria was decapitating citizens. Turned out to be like a video from the drug cartel in Mexico or something along those lines. It wasn't even they weren't even speaking Spanish. It was dubbed over. So you have to really, vet your resources and get your facts straight before you go and call out names and put yourself in a very embarrassing position, which can happen very easily with social media. So I think that is the best advice that I could give you.
We might as well go right over to Fritz and say I know digital technology is not just, you could talk some about the journalism side, but as a challenge to business, it's huge also when it comes to how fast you might have to make a decision if you're watching energy markets or making a decision, if that's one example. So
Very important. And I find myself asking the question more now than ever, what is the value of social media? And everybody's telling me I get so many clicks, so many hits. How do I translate that into dollars and cents? And again, you made an excellent point. And I'll say to you guys, I keep coming back to the term responsibility as a journalist. Don't hedge on it. Don't joke about it. Many of us are counting on you to be responsible. A lot of bloggers out here, a lot of people doing a lot of things and getting information. We're in the information age. A lot of people are in information business, but not enough professional, solid, serious journalists. Not people just writing to make money. So I say to you, the digital is changing the whole landscape. It's changing how we as business decision makers, because I must make decisions every day. And I rely on information to make decisions. They often say if I'm batting 70%, I'm okay. I mean, the information I'm getting is accurate and I'm using it wisely. If I'm batting 95%, I can get arrogant, okay? That means I'm getting more valuable information. But it's important. Use the I'm counting on digital media, and I'm technically challenged. I'm old school, and it took me a long while to even text. But we still have to rely on what you're giving to us. So again, be accurate, be clear about what you're communicating. Because the digital media is here to stay.
Excuse me, folks. Another thing that's very important to us right now, actually, several people in this room now are part of the class that I'm teaching this semester on editorial writing, commentary, and criticism. And one of the things that's connected, I'd like to get a sense of how it's connected to covering international issues in New York and international communities in New York, and also in relationship to the speed in which everything is being updated online and through social media and other aspects. How do you approach the editorial voice in your columns, in your publications, and what's the kind of editorial mindset that is necessary to be of service to immigrant communities and to communities that have an international background? What's the voice that you're looking for? What's the kind of editorial pieces that are going to work for your publications and for your audiences?
Well, I think, like Joe mentioned, when you're a new immigrant group in this country, there are certain needs that you have. You need to understand the system. And so now, as a publication, what you need to do is need to understand that and provide your community with various voices. Because I shudder to think when we have sort of like, one voice, because that doesn't really spur debate. It doesn't really help that community progress, frankly. And I think the key is to have different people talk about different topics. Generally, a lot of the papers and these ethnic papers, for financial reasons, tend to focus on the politics back home because it's easier to really have an opinion about what's happening back home. But what people really want, frankly, is what's happening here, and that's not being done enough as far as I'm concerned. And I do understand the reality. I mean, we all know how difficult it is to run a publication, and news business is very expensive business, and so you have a shortage of that. And I would say that we should encourage the students to work for these publications. And I'm not making a shameless self-promotion, but it's really important that young people who are hyphenated Americans who understand the communities work for their communities as a way. And first of all, it's the best place you're going to get a chance to start. Other publications won't give you a chance. And we talked about earlier about being an entrepreneur at the J School, which we teach entrepreneurial journalism. And that sounds good, and it is good. But before you get to that point, you need to get a start. And these publications provide you with that start. And you can bring a voice into the mix that would be highly appreciated. I've made a transition about 5 years ago out of the Haitian Times. And the editor now is 27-year-old, graduated from Hofstra, and she's doing a fabulous job because she understands things the way I can't really comprehend. Although I'm not as bad as Fritz, I do text. But it's really important. And now she's taking the site to places that I don't have the energy to take it. And it's really important. There's a lot of opportunities here for you guys to really build these publications and gain the experience that you need to move on.
If they wanted to pitch editorials to you that are pertinent to the community, pertinent to your audience, how do they go about pitching an editorial comment? It does have either an editorial column or a commentary piece. How do they approach you? How do they get their opinions?
Okay. In our newspaper, we have let me answer this question in two parts. First part is how do the ordinary people, or just Chinese or what other country people who can read Chinese, when they want to offer opinion, we do have a forum, a whole page of forum publishing twice a week, and they can voice their concern and their opinion to certain issue. However, in current situation, most the article that or the editorial article we received is concerned like Gary said is something related to the China or Taiwan or Hong Kong. It's the hometown commentary things. Most article we receive cannot mention that much about city politics, about city finance situation or city education system, because most of the people that do not still in the process of learning whole United States, whole city government, how do they work though. So this is a part that you answer your question. Yes, we do have a page for our reader to voice their concern, and they're directly to their editorial pages. Like New York Times, they have 2 outlet page too. On the other hand, 5 years ago, I've been offered opportunity to write a column on our weekly magazine, and from past 4 years, I learned the process of how to write a column, represent your position, but not deviate too much from the paper's position, because a newspaper owner, they do have their own position in certain issue though. Maybe he's a Republican, but I'm a Democrat, or that kind of a situation will happen though. So you need to, but when the person reach a status can be offered to write a column, that means he covers something, cover many story or have experience or something to a certain amount of issue. So people will listen to what he said. So right now I'm the process like I have to publish my articles on Sunday. So I start to thinking about what should I write on Thursday. But before Thursday, I have to constantly read a lot of news that I think is important. For instance, I knew the Malala Peace Nobel Prize gonna be announced. That I started to pay attention who this person will be. When the announcement was made on Malala, so I started consuming all kind of information regarding Malala, and then I formed my own opinion, my own standard, my moral standards. I think this is a girl should be recognized by Chinese readers to some extent through my columns. So that at that time that you have your own personal opinion on a certain columns. But to answer your question, yes, we do have a page offer for our people to voice their voice.
Get ready. I'm going to turn it over to all of you guys in about 1 minute. Unless I see hands like shoot up right now, I have one follow-up question. I heard a lot of talk about HTML, hypertext markup language, right? Okay, I happen to be at a little deficit there. But how much from each person would you give a number, or you can actually say it in sentences, the priority towards technical skills to survive versus solid reporting and writing skills? For example, I'm a Luddite, and I would probably say 80 to 90% writing and reporting, and of course you got to leave a healthy 20 or more for staying up on the most necessary technologies. How would you answer that if we start with the School, our representative, Gary? What do you think is 20 too low? And of course you're in a graduate school that's so high tech, it's slightly tilted towards technology, but there must be some professors who really want to just get the writing and the reporting and writing in the driver's seat, maybe 60, 70%, not 80.
I guess he's attended our meetings, huh? Well, yeah. I mean, it's really personal to the reporter what you want. Frankly, that's the way I would answer that. Some people love this HTML stuff. Others just love camera work, for still photo. The key is that you have to have a balance. You have to have another set of skills these days. Because I'm not a big proponent of this one band thing. I think it's border and mediocrity and lack of professionalism, because I think it's just too much going on there for you to expect somebody to do a professional job, doing everything all at once. I think that's kind of okay, and I hope that passes. Having said that, it's good to have those skills because it's important. You really can do your work at a higher level, and if you're able to illustrate your work much better than somebody else can, and you can help you. It also makes you more employable. I mean, it's difficult now, but people are getting hired. Video editors, people who can shoot video, people who can do these things. The web is where it's at, frankly, at these major news organizations. Believe it or not, they've been pushing their mobile digital platforms a lot more than their print or even TV and radio stations. So you just have to, I would say, choose one plus writing. Writing is fundamental, and so I'm sure you get that every day, and that's true. You can't get away with it if you're going to be a journalist. And it's not, don't go and study English, that's something different. I mean, being able to write, whether you want to go on TV and read the news, or whether you want to be a hard-nosed, print and go in the field and write, or you want to do radio, but you still have to write. When I leave here, I have a script that I have to write for my TV show. So writing, you have to really master that. It has to become second nature to you. And that's what I would say, and understand everything else we've talked about. I think too much is made on this HTML back end. It's important, but that has changed so much in the last 3 years to a point where now WordPress and some other platforms just give you the stuff. All you have to do is go in the back end and build a website. So, it's good to know it, but what you learn now, 5 years later, may be totally useless.
Speaking of back end, you don't have the budget to have a lot of tech staff to be able to have a robust, like say, social media presence, or brand new things like the New York Times avalanche snowfall is not going to be in the World Journal. But where do you put your mark on the reporting and writing versus, I'm going to hire that new guy because his clips are okay, but he actually does a hell of a lot of HTML. Where are you on that split?
Well, we're still in a very early stage right now, but we are hiring people looking at whether he has video journalism ability. That's become really a must, because we do have a website. All of us want to cut the reporter courses. So if one person can do two kind of works, that would be most desirable to hire. So right now, I think she's very right. The video journalism is going to be the mainstream for each one of you. You got to prepare that kind of technique, and I do believe there is a good video and bad video, but I don't know how to distinguish that, because right now I just receiving like you're receiving end about the video, the contents, because that's the news. I cannot tell whether if another video doing the same news is good and this one is very bad. I cannot tell the difference right now, because this is only really main source right now.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Okay. I'm going to skip you, Sudeb, because you already made the HTML comments. All right. And Fritz, you want to add to this part of the writing tech divide, or?
Not really,
Okay.
except that I still like to read journalism.
Yeah, read some print articles.
I like to read,
Right.
whether it's coming across the
On
internet.
your
or-
iPad?
No.
iPad?
On your iPad, you're reading it?
No, I have what call the next one now, the pad.
Yes.
I'm learning, I'm going through that now.
Because I was just
The
going to
pad.
say you like to read your articles, but maybe you're reading them on a beautiful iMac in your office.
No.
Okay, so we'll open it up to our guests, students. Thank you very much for coming. And we'll start out with Ashley. Please identify yourself before you ask your question.
Hi, my name is Ashley Oliver. I'm a sophomore and I'm a journalism major. Okay, I have two questions. Okay, one, for the Caribbean and even international, I've noticed that when I go into a lot of international restaurants, I see that they give out the newspapers for free. So I always wonder how do we make money? Yeah, I see, and then if it's on the website, there's no paywall. So I always wonder how do the journalists make money? Because I just see them giving it out for free. So
I think it's advertising.
Advertising, because depending on how many publications you give out, or your distribution, you can charge your ads based on your circulation. So you can give it away until you get your numbers up, and you're making money on the ads.
And your second question?
Oh, that was the second question because for the websites, do they have a paywall? How do you guys if there are paywalls? I was always wondering how do the journalists make money?
The
Go ahead.
newspapers that I've worked with have charged for the newspaper, but they haven't charged for the paywall. They haven't charged for the website. The website's been free.
Do you have the debate in the paper? Joe, do you have the debate
Yes,
going on
yes,
in
we
your paper right now
do.
about-
We do have a debate though. I think
'Cause
major.
I'm assuming it's free now.
Yes,
Online.
it's free. It's free right now. Yes, but on a mobile moving platform, that will be charged though monthly, about 99 cents per month though. Still very low though. Yeah, still debating. You know, most because if you're talking about the major news, like President Obama in China, that's all everywhere. So you don't have to subscribe to certain news outlet to see that news though. So for the major news right now, I think you can get everywhere. You can go to any free website, you can get that though. However, you wanted to look at the particular content news, like what the Mayor de Blasio just announced 25-mile roadblock, speed roadblock on the city. If you're in New York, you have to see our newspaper in Chinese, because there's nowhere the New York Times will put it. New York Times have a Chinese website. You know that though, yeah. So this is another thing. Is the thing about New York Times have a news Chinese website. Wall Street Journal have a Chinese website. And Reuters has a Chinese website. Financial Times have a Chinese news website. So all the major international outlets have the Chinese version of what is happening. And they instantly translate the English article into Chinese article. So that's free right now, I guess, online, yes.
I have a quick question for you. I feel like interviewing all of these guys right now. They're all wonderful. So, are you on Weibo? Are you using Chinese social media to kind of like, Weibo is a site where the government can't help young Chinese like are on Weibo a lot, and that's how they communicate dissident information across the region. Are
Yes.
you on Weibo?
Yes,
are you
we're on Weibo.
communicating
Yes,
through Weibo?
yes, we do right now on the Weibo.
And are
That's
the
totally,
Wall
yes.
Street version of in Chinese and the New York Times in Chinese, are they different? Are they reporting differently because they have to tailor it because there's a government there? Are they reporting differently compared to what we're reading in the English version?
No. The Chinese version of the New York Times was written. Both are very accurate. Translate from
But a
English.
machine is doing it. So when you read a computer that's translated the Wall Street Journal story, you can notice it's a machine, or is it that good?
No, it's not news. It's not a Google translation. It's they do have a
person.
translator.
Okay, good. I thought maybe it was a Google.
No. It's a
I thought it was different because in Pakistan recently, a New York Times reporter reported on Osama bin Laden and the government knowing where he was, the Pakistani government knowing when the New York Times arrived in Pakistan to be sent out, that section of the newspaper was cut out. And if you pulled up the New York Times in Pakistan, you couldn't see that article. So I was wondering if there was that kind of,
No, that's good
yes,
HTML
yes,
knowledge.
yes.
yeah,
They do.
so.
They do. All the international news media outlets, as far as I know, in China, they have their self-censorship program kicking. There are certain people will just review some photo. For instance, last night, a very interesting story that I don't think is American media covered that though. There's a foreign policy media kicking that though. All right, it's President Putin from Russia. He's sitting there, and the Chinese First Lady is sitting there, and the Chinese President sitting here, and Mr. Obama sitting next to the president's seat over there. And I guess in a big banquet hall, so it's kind of a chilly though. And suddenly, Mr. Putin stand up, getting a what do you call it, jacket or something, put on Mrs. Xi's shoulder. Then she's kind of awkward though, because the Chinese lady don't do that though, right? And so it become a story, and then all the this is a live broadcasting in China. Somehow this video was cut out immediately. And however, the AP photo, have AP filed a photo about this, but on the caption say this is China out. Means you don't use this in China, so you can use it internationally. So people in China, there's kind of a censorship out of this interesting moment. But the title of the foreign policy website is a Russian tiger made his move.
Nice.
So it's kind of interesting though.
Go ahead. We were talking about paywalls and digital publishing. Maybe you were going to talk about your paper. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the media business is at a crossroads right now. It's almost contradicting parallels. Whereas the audience has never been larger, and the money has never been smaller. and this is what the race is to how to monetize it. Simply put, unfortunately, as much as we love print, those of us who do, it's gone. 5 to 10 years, 20 years. There's a lifespan to that. And now, how do you make money? Unfortunately, excuse me. This conversation began in the early 1990s, 1900s now, where this is what happened. When the internet was becoming a thing in newsrooms, everyone thought, okay, like we were saying earlier, the business model in print was that, you have advertising and then you could just give it away. The more people have read it, the more likely you can charge for your advertising. And the same mindset was taken over to the internet, Wild Wild Web. And we all thought that the money was going to be endless because you had unlimited space. Well, it didn't work out that way. We thought that, okay, we'll just give it away, and the more we'll have 2,000 pages or more, and you could have ads and bring revenues that, we never knew could be made in our business. And unfortunately, what stuck was the free part. Everybody then felt that everything should be free if it's on the internet. Well, free is not a business model, and Fritz will attest to that. You cannot give something away free and think it's a business model. It doesn't work. And right now, we outsmarted ourselves as an industry. And everybody wants everything free. And democracy, freedom are not free. And we need to, we're getting a very slippery slope where journalism is becoming a hobby, where it's the domain of the rich, those with trust funds. I could practice journalism. It is very, very dangerous, because as long as this country remains a Jeffersonian democracy, there must be a free and a professional press, media, whatever term you want to use. And I'm afraid with this sort of like rush, and this is where I'm a critic of social media and new media, we are not professionalizing our work. And mediocrity is passing for journalism, and that is, to me, disturbing.
Thank you, because I tweeted during the talk, and I should have been moderating, but I tweeted during the talk, photo tweet. Go ahead, Fritz.
No, I just want to agree with you there, because I keep going back to responsibility. I'm talking to young people. You got to exercise responsibility. Your generation will have to undo some things that my generation did. And a lot of it has to do with how we communicated across cultures, across business. I'm saying you guys need to change that. To get back to how you make money as a journalist, okay? You can write a book. You can consult with business organizations that need to get quality information out. Develop the skill to do quality work, not fast, but quality. You can do it fast, but make sure it's quality. And, again, with social media, I have 5 million hits. Where did they go? Okay, where did they go? Are those people receiving those hits, do they have any value and a relationship to what I'm doing? I don't know. So don't tell me how many hits you're having. It's get down to the business of it. As a journalist, look at the business, follow the money.
Rodney, go ahead.
So this is a question for you. Well, I know that you're a multimedia reporter, and would you say that you sort of, how much to a degree do you incorporate like social media into your reporting, and like where do you find that balance? Because here at your thing, kind of tell us that we should sort of incorporate social media, be on LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that. So to what degree do you incorporate social media into your own reporting?
Almost every day. Most of my resources I find on, nobody responds to text messages anymore either. You have to reach out to them on Twitter and Facebook. Like, you have to Facebook message them to respond to you. So I reach out to, if I don't, I'm a very annoying person. So if I don't hear from you an email, if I don't get a response, if I email someone that an expert that I want to talk to and I'm interested in, and I'm very persistent, and I really want this person because I think they have the best information to share with me, I'll email them for one day. If they don't email me back within the business day, so by 5 p.m. At 6, I'll start Twittering at them. I will start Facebooking them. I will do whatever it takes to get them. I have to do that.
That is what you need to do for every
You guys should
article
all
in
remember
280.
that. Persistence.
I get on them everywhere. If I could find out where they lived, I'd show up to their house. Like that is the degree of like how crazy I am.
Another good question
So-
for students, because we are out of time. Guess who gets this classroom at 1:50? Lewis. So we cannot go over. So another question. Thank you, Rodney. Introduce yourself to your colleagues and to our guests.
Okay,
Jewel.
hello everyone, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. I'm Jewel Benson, I'm a journalism student. And a question that I have is, since writing is such a fundamental part of journalism, then how exactly would you see print dying in the next 10 years or so?
Well, good question, because you see, I'm platform agnostic. I really don't care. I mean, people are all into this, newspapers dying. No, it doesn't really matter. You're right. It's the art of it that's important. Where it ends up being published is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned, because I want my craft to be read. I want people to see what my work. And, you know, I don't have any stock in any paper plant, so I really don't care. I just think, you know, because the good thing about the web is that it incorporates every media we've had in the past into one nice package. Because when we call that text now in our jargon, you know, when people say text, they're talking about the print, the writing. And then, you know, where else can you really incorporate all the visual and the textual element into, you know, a great, powerful piece? I mean, that's the beauty of it, because what you can get across in new media right now and with this platform is really powerful. I think it can really help elevate our work. And it really does. You shouldn't worry about what we should worry about is how to make money out of this, really, so that we can become professionals and we don't have to succumb to all kinds of temptations. Because if you can't, really, I've seen my colleagues across the world where, you know, they have to cut corners. They have to become PR for the government or private sector so they can make a living, because journalism cannot pay their bills. And again, I've said this before, you know, we come and sleep very close to that here, where, you know, it's not for a profession worth going into. We were talking about how to make money earlier. You know, again, books, nah, nobody's writing books. Yeah, money, exactly. Exactly. I mean, right?
Because you love it.
Exactly. If you want to make money, I mean, go to Baruch. I'm telling you right now, transfer to Baruch. Yeah, exactly. but no. But this is love and passion, and you know, we're talking about some of the things that you need, and that's what you government to this business for. And the money will come. And you know, one of the things that I'm working hard to leave for you is how we get to that point where, you know, the money is there, and that you won't have to worry about that business model is developed.
Thank you, Gary. Let me just say thank you to all of our guests, starting with Fritz and also Sadeth and Joe and Gary. Thank you very much for being here.